the second I figured out that you can know how many searches are happening a month for a particular thing, my life was forever changed.
Brittany, you started off as a public relations communications undergrad.
Yeah.
And now you are a senior SEO scientist at the premier SEO digital analytics company. How in the world did that happen?
Yeah, such a weird path. In a nutshell, I basically couldn't find a job after college. And so I packed up my car and I drove out to Breckenridge, Colorado to fulfill my lifelong dream of becoming a snowboard bum full-time, which I loved.
We all have to have goals.
Right? I set my goal real high. And after, a season out there and waiting tables, I got pretty bored and was, anxious to do something. And I met up with a local realtor who taught me all about SEO. And the second I figured out that you can know how many searches are happening a month for a particular thing, my life was forever changed. I thought that was the most interesting thing in the world, that information is just at our fingertips. And so I began making up words and creating these, one-off websites to rank for all sorts of things. Did some low-level nefarious things I didn't know were that nefarious at the time. Was leaving corporate 500 companies messages within their Google Analytics accounts, things like that, which I highly suggest no one does. But it was interesting because my goal was to rank number 1 for Burton US Open, day of the event, the first time they came to Vail. And so I had worked 7 months on this effort, and day of the event rolls around, and sure enough, my website ranks right above Burton.com. And so that's when I kind of knew I was onto something and caused some waves in the SEO community, as you might imagine. And a couple people reached out to me and were like, you can do this and make money. You can do this and get paid and have, And so I teamed up with someone in Vail, Rich Stats, and we had an awesome time growing his agency for a year. And then I left to start my own. I had Pride Marketing for around 5 years, and we were a boutique medical marketing agency that worked with private practices where we had sort of figured out how that whole process worked. We had it down to a science. And then I started speaking at conferences like this, and that's where I met a lot of my current industry friends today. Rand Fishkin told me that Cyrus was leaving Moz and they would love it if I were to apply. And so I went through the whole process, and now I'm at Moz. That was kind of a crazy journey.
You went from a non-technical background to a technical background.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people who want to know how they can move into that. They understand that SEO or analytics, they understand that these things are part of the future of marketing.
Yeah.
Yet they're not sure what they can do. So what can they do to move themselves from this non-technical background into a technical space?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I do see that a lot, where people, just because they don't have a technical background, don't feel comfortable or confident going into that space. And that's where I highly suggest you figure out how to build a website, and not from scratch, not you have to be a perfect programmer, but just that you know how to set up a WordPress site on a server somewhere, and that you know how those connections come to play. Just understanding how, your domain name points to your server files that then get fetched for the browser. Just knowing that path helps you wrap your head around technical elements. And it also really gives you this beautiful space to play around and to experiment on your own site and to break things. I still have several of these today that I will run different technical tests on, or if I'm not feeling totally comfortable in meta tags or how this might work, maybe I will go try it there first, right? It's a great way to experience these things before, you're kind of put on the spot for a client or, a business. But in addition to that, I'm a firm believer that, you should be breaking things. Go break that website, set things up technically that you are above what you're comfortable doing, just so you can start getting the hang of it. And it's okay to do that when, you're just starting out. It's okay to do that when you've purchased your own really cheap server and can just goof around on it. That's half the fun.
Now, when you say breaking things, what do you mean by that?
I literally mean just breaking things. Yeah. So breaking your website so you can't figure out how to get back into it. I mean, I've done that so many times. But it's given me the confidence to speak about these things, because without that, I would be relying on, observations or what I've heard others say. And I guess for me, at least, it means a lot to know what I'm speaking about, to have, gotten my hands dirty and know how that works. And then you're able to really communicate and create good relationships with developers, which is half the battle in SEO, right? You need to be able to know how to speak their language in order to get things implemented, and also just to be on the same page. Because a lot of times there's this perceived rift between developers and SEOs that is completely unnecessary. We have so much to learn from developers, and developers can learn from SEOs and why these things need to be set up a certain way. So just being, dangerous enough to break things or to know where things at facilitates this level of communication that helps you get so much more done.
I like this idea of finding value in the errors or finding value in the mistakes.
Absolutely.
And then learning from that. So in your career, what are the things, I guess, that you've learned that have helped you to kind of move where you are today? And what's the future? What's where are you going?
Oh gosh, that's a really good question. So I think there's two big things. Well, let's say three big things in a nutshell that have helped me get to where I am today. One is this element of fun, and that like I said, I would get so excited trying to figure out how many searches a month people were doing for like Britney Spears, silly stuff like that. I had so much fun. This was a giant game to me. So instead of going home and watching a movie, I would tinker and play. Like, this was a true passion of mine. So if you can find, whether it be a space where you're really passionate about it, or you can become passionate about the different SEO things that get things done in that space, latch on to that, because that facilitates so much curiosity. This wasn't work for me, and a lot of it still isn't today. I'm insatiably curious to know how these things work, like what makes this tick versus this. And so because of that curiosity, I was constantly on Twitter, and that's where I learned tons of stuff, and how quickly things were changing was all coming through Twitter, through these influencers. And that really helped me move the needle. In addition to the third thing, just being super competitive. I grew up playing sports and a brother, and I think if you can provide that level of competition, and again, it's like a game, and you want to win, and you can have fun with it, it's just the perfect mix to accelerate your career. Whether, it could be in whatever industry, you can use all of those.